Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the show. So happy to have you here.
Hi, thank you very much. Welcome. Very pleased to be with you.
I know we have a lot to cover in terms of property management and some shifts that we've seen in the market. But before we get into that, would love to hear more about your background and how you found the entrepreneurship life.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, my background is I have an interesting background. So I started my life in the video games business, which really was the envy of most young 20-year-olds back in the day when we were using cartridges and putting them into Atari 2600 machines. I am that old. And started my first business in 1988, which I guess, brings you onto being entrepreneurship. You sit in a kind of a camp of, will I will I ever do my own business, or will I always work for somebody? And either there's no right answer to those two things. But I always felt that I never really understood why I was making lots of money for other people when I was making the money. So why don't I make the money for myself? And that, I think, was a reasonable motivator. And I'm also, my glass is always full. I'm never half full. I'm a very positive person. So I think you need that kind of energy in being to start a business. So I started the business back in video games, 1988. I'm sure you will be aware that we went on to create a game called Tomb Raider. That went on to sell. Tomb Raider 1 sold, I think, 10 million copies, and the series, whilst I was still there, sold 30, 40 million copies. I sold my business in 1997, made a ton of money, which was great. And then spent a ton of money, which was not so great, and realized that you can't have it all and then spend it all. It doesn't keep coming. So I started another business, and then really fell into. I sort of moved out of the video games business as it grew and grew and grew, and it was very good to me. But I started with the iPhone, I suppose, and looking at that and saying, there's more to this than just being a phone. And when it was launched, it was revolutionary. But after about 2 years, it's very obvious. If you remember going way back, you had the koi carp in a pond that you looked at, and that was all very cool. But there's definitely more that could come out of that. And then I looked at companies like IBM and SAS and Oracle and these huge companies, and thinking, well, they're never going to understand how to get software into something as small as a mobile phone, and put together a team to sort of create software, looking at commercial software of how we could make that mobile. And I don't mean mobile as in phones, I mean mobile as in on the move from a tablet to scale. Because one thing we were very good at in the video games business is getting lots of memory, or use of very small amounts of memory, lots and lots of graphic, and very smart in getting data into a very small space, which essentially was what was happening in the phone. So it started Spike 10 years ago, and we did some stuff with the car industry, which is in the dinosaur age, and how their technology is remarkable. They make great cars, but their systems is very, very weak. We did some work with the medical sector, which again, they can produce you and transplant a new heart, which is amazing. But if you want to get your medical record sent 200 miles down the road, you might as well take a pigeon, because it's pretty difficult. So we the industries were too big, and I stumbled, if you like, into the construction world, which again is very similar. One of these sectors that is so huge, but has not changed fundamentally in years. Yes, they've changed in materials, they've changed in design. The buildings are incredible, and some of the architects are amazing. But when it comes to actually then dealing with the building once it's built, the traditional developer is, well, I built it, I don't really care now. I'm gone. And that to us was fascinating. And I think for me, the monumental shift was TripAdvisor. I think TripAdvisor is not given as much credit as it should be done, really, because TripAdvisor changed the thought process of the world. It's enabled people to freely say that restaurant's bad, or that hotel's poor, or that car manufacturer won't do anything about fixing my car. Or it gave this open forum suddenly to consumers, where before the manufacturers or the builders, the developers they were the almighty, and you couldn't argue. How can you argue with these guys? They're so big. Where suddenly the little guy could go on his phone, and by the way, it can be abused, so it's not all great. But if they feel aggrieved about something, or aggrieved rather, they can send a message out. And TripAdvisor was fundamental in changing people's shift, and that came very quickly within the world of construction and the world of living in an apartment or a house, where people for years have put up with poor maintenance, can't get hold of the landlord, all of these things that drive people crazy. What we did, what we enabled them, was to give them a platform where they were able to actually talk to the building management company, or to the owner, or to the builder of the house. Doesn't matter what it is. That it was a vehicle to communicate.
Excellent. And thank you so much for taking me through the history as well, and also mentioning TripAdvisor too, and how important it is to have and foster that sense of community so that people can have more of a pulse on knowing what the reality is for whether it's a given vendor or so. And one really interesting quote that I pulled from your website was, when people choose where they live and work, they are investing in a lifestyle. So could you explain to me more and how Spike helps in the lifestyle aspect?
Of course. Well, I think, whilst the US and UK and Europe are not that different, we all strive for the same thing. Our house or our apartment is our castle. It's somewhere that we live. It's the biggest investment we will make in our life. And whether that's renting or buying, it doesn't matter. It's a very big capital investment. So for us, it's all about giving people, when they move into these apartments or houses, the best chance possible of having the best experience of being there. And what our software does, it engages. So it engages with the building management company or the construction company. We don't mind who they engage with, so long as they engage with the right people. So suddenly as a tenant, you'll no longer feel in the dark. You have a platform via an app that enables you to communicate directly with the person who's responsible for making sure the lifts are working, or making sure the communal grounds, that the grass is cut, or fixing your leaky tap in the bathroom that you've only lived in the house for a week, or the apartment, and your tap's leaking. You can directly send that message directly to the managing company, and they can respond back and say, "Really sorry, Joe is here. Your tap's leaking. We'll have somebody on site within the next 24 hours." Excuse me. And that, as a homeowner, tenant, whatever you want to call yourself, is the most important part of living within that and having that living experience. And then secondly, what our software does, it creates communities, and it enables you to create clubs and forums and bring people together. And we all know this is where the American ethos is slightly different to the UK one. We're a little bit more reserved. We'll happily stand in a lift in the UK with somebody and maybe nod, and that's probably about as far as it will go. And I spent a lot of time in the States, where Americans are far more forthright. Good morning, how are you? Yeah, it's great, love that. So what we were able to do is break down barriers, where suddenly you're talking probably to your neighbor via a piece of software, which some would argue, well, that's not really great. Well, it's better than not communicating. And then when you get into the lift, you might have a conversation. So it's giving you the vehicle to create these communities. And we've seen now, with all the data that we get back from the usage of our software, these are very well and heavily used parts of what we do. Yes, reporting your showers leaking and telling them that the bulb's gone out in the lift, and all of those sort of, getting your post and door entry. That's all day-to-day living. But joining a book club or a yoga club or a jogging club, where you're meeting your fellow neighbors, that's something very special.
Of course. And I didn't even realize the cultural difference in what you mentioned of one culture maybe being more open to saying hi, hello, sharing information about the building. But in the case, say, where your customers live, they may not have that natural want to do that. And by having some sort of app that allows them to facilitate that communication really helps.
Yeah. No, we've been, amazed at COVID was a dreadful time for everybody, but suddenly having the ability to communicate to people in your same development, your same apartment block, and some of the things that we saw people do, don't ever lose faith in the human race. We will be fine. And seeing that people will, I can collect your prescription for you, or do you need any food collecting, or your incredible just messages and messages of people wanting to help via a communal app. Suddenly it makes it all worthwhile. It really, truly does.
Excellent. And it also offers a level of like security as well. Instead of just being like on a Reddit forum or a Facebook group, having it housed
Yeah,
within an app.
yeah, absolutely. And it's ring fenced. It's only for people within your development and your scheme. So
That's
it's
great.
not for the outside world, and so that's, as you say, for safety aspect, very important.
So I can imagine that having so many different vendors and people within one single ecosystem of an app can be a lot on a technical side. So could you mention a little bit of some challenges maybe you were and a team were able to overcome in the early stages?
Yeah, well, you're right. It's all kind of about scalability, isn't it? So I think that we were very fortunate, and in people that joined the company in the very early days they understood the journey we wanted to go on. And I realize that's a real cliche, but it's not meant to be said as a cliche. I'm all about wanting to be people understand what we do. I'm not technical at all. I have no technical ability at all, which is very dangerous. So bringing in the best that we could get to come in and believe in what we were doing was what it's all about. So from the onset, we had very talented people setting out and architecting how this thing was going to work. The obvious challenges have all been about, you can be very careful about the security. You're dealing with people's data. So from the onset, it's got to be of the highest level of security you can get. Dealing with, you can take payments through our system, you can book things through our system, and crazy things like creating a booking system is actually quite difficult because of all the permutations of booking something. Somebody might cancel it. Somebody might want it for an extra hour. It just blows your mind. Luckily, it didn't blow my mind because I had people whose mind it was blowing. So I can take no credit for his technical abilities, I'm afraid. I can take credit for kind of staying in the driving seat and pushing the vision forward. But luckily, having great people at the side of me that could do all of that.
Which is an incredible skill in itself. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear from folks who want to build something out, they say, well, if I don't have the technical skills, then I guess I can't get it done. When in fact, it's all about a team. It's about having the vision, having people that have the right skill sets to fit the puzzle. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thought process on that.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that. And going back to the days of creating video games, when I started our first company in creating games, we would have one of our guys would be a graphic designer, so he'd do all the artwork. He'd also be the musician. He'd do all the music for it. And then the other guy would be a programmer. And you'd have sort of four people writing a game across PCs, Commodore 64, Spectrums, and 8 or 9 different bits of hardware. So, but fitting all the pieces into the jigsaw. And what's brilliant about it's kind of a starting industry, and I-class prop tech is still very, very early days, is that it starts it's a kind of a bedroom mentality. Video games were written in the bedroom by young kids that were super smart, wanted to create their own games, and just stayed and did the graphics, the music, and the programming, all three themselves. Where prop tech has come along, it's coming to a very well-established sector. But it's still, because there's nobody to kind of look into it and say, well, they've owned it or they've owned it. There's a number of companies that are quite been around in the sector for quite a while, but they haven't really evolved. And it's all about evolving. And that is about, you're right, back to your jigsaw analogy. How do you evolve that? You evolve that with the right people and with the right vision. Because one of the worst things about software, which I've learned over the years, is that legacy software will eventually die. They're like dinosaurs. They roamed the world and ruled the world, and I have no doubt that they were amazing. But guess what? they will die
Yeah,
unless they evolve.
exactly. And how has your company evolved over the last 10 years?
Well, we've reborn ourselves, if you like, 4 times, and that's what you have to do. You have to, like a snake, shed its skin and go again, and keep. If you don't keep on the forefront of technology, that is being what the latest technology that's available to programmers and artists, the best tools, you will die in the outback, because if you don't keep in front of that game, there's always somebody like me comes along that does. So you've got to stay at the front.
It-
I always say, we were the first in the UK to do a residence portal, and whilst that's amazing and we dominate the market space, I don't want to be the next Yahoo.
Mhm.
They were first to market and sadly first out, and you'll be very conscious of that.
Agreed. I mean, I've used so many tools as a mom and pop real estate investor
Yep.
back in 2019, 2020, that even saying now, like they don't really cut it in comparison to what is coming onto market, just
Yep.
because they haven't evolved. So
Yep.
I think you make a really great statement of ever continuing involvement. So in terms of rent versus buy, there's a lot of
Yes.
hype around that topic throughout, I think, the world as well. So, specifically for the UK, do you see more people becoming renters and thus larger buildings and community becoming an even more important aspect?
It has to, because I have no idea how the younger generation can ever afford to buy a house at the moment. And I think if you look at the eco trail of where we've so when I went to college and university, I was in a grubby little bedsit and it was cold and it didn't have any heating and the water worked spasmodically, and it was a very typical, but we had great fun, by the way. There were like 4 of us shared it, and it was an absolute scream. Where now I can look out of this window here and look at this purpose-built student accommodation, which is like a beautiful hotel. You get a studio bedroom with Wi-Fi and hot running water and kitchenette and facilities with quiet rooms for revision, and amazing. So they stay in there for 3 years or 4 years. Then when they come out, again, I rented when my first place that I went when I got a job was a flat that wasn't amazing, but it was okay. Well, now they come out of these places, you go, well, I don't want to live in a not so great place. I've just come out of this amazing 5-star student accommodation. So co-living, I think, is something that is starting and should be more better use. And rental, you look at the rental market, particularly in the UK, and I think throughout Europe, the stigma of renting that used to be some ridiculous stigma, I don't know why it ever was, that's gone. The younger generation, the sort of the 22 to 30-year-olds, they can rent these amazing apartments with five football fields on the top floor, swimming pools, gymnasiums. Why wouldn't you? Why
Yeah,
would you not do that? So the mentality is definitely, the swing is shifting, and I only see that as a positive thing. I'm not of that generation where I feel you've got to own a house, you've got to work your entire life, pay your mortgage off, give the house to your kids when you die. No, go and have some fun and make the best of what you are able to do.
agreed. And it's a really interesting like comparison that you draw in terms of like dorms today for students have really
Yeah,
elevated. And I've seen that also in the US too, where it's a lot nicer of an experience. So at that
yes.
stage of the student leaving college, they'd rather co-live in a really nice luxury apartment with some friends versus living in like an older, say, shack on their own. That's a
Yeah,
really interesting way how like we've seen just people change in their behavior.
yeah. And they are the future. These guys are the future. I'm the dinosaur. These guys are the future. They're all coming through and will be, running the world. And that is what they want. And they're controlling. Don't forget, they control that market. Yes, it's expensive to buy houses, but to be honest with you, it's expensive to buy houses when I was younger. But I did. And I look back at it and think, God, why? But I did. And that was the mentality. That is changing. And technology plays a part of that. Being in one of these places, we have amazing clients with incredible, um, multi-family developments. It's fantastic. And then on top of that, they get a piece of software, they get an app that brings the community together. They can book the gym, they can order a coffee from the coffee shop, they can talk to their neighbor next door, they can put something online to sell just within their community. It feels safe. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, of course. And let's actually dive into a little bit more of the features on the property management aspect.
Sure.
So, if I have a 100-unit building, I'm using your software. What are some things that I'd be able to expect with your product?
Well, for a start, we'd probably have the door entry system would be on your phone. For that would be the number one thing. Keep it all. The holy grail is to have everything on one app. So you click on the door, you go into the door, and you're in. You go into your apartment, and you can adjust your heating, your TV, your lighting through the app. You can then look at any residents' news that might be happening. Oh, there's a residents' association meeting this evening. Oh, should I go to that? Oh, hold on, they're offering a free glass of wine. Oh, yeah, I might go to that. And just things like so. Oh, I've got a notification to tell me I've got a parcel waiting for me to be collected. I'll go and get my parcel. So you've got it's all about taking away the thought and the stress rather than the thought of living in the apartment. How can we make life easier? So for the property management company, it's about communication. Property management people have to communicate with their residents. They've got to tell them about the fire escape policies. They've got to tell them about the new health and safety laws. They've got to tell them all of these things which are so dull, but they have to be told. They have to give them to the resident who must take note, because we've seen through, our bad experience of fires and dreadful things that happen. Technology can help with that. It helps with bringing things into one place. It's all about ease of access, and that's a very important thing to say. And ease of access is about accessing numerous bits of information. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just make it easy to get to.
Yeah, make it easy to get to, help to mitigate risk, which I haven't thought about as being such an important aspect in property management, which is
Hugely important. We're finding it particularly in the UK, and I'm sure the States isn't that different. Is that now the emphasis is being put onto the property managers now. It's all about your responsibility. If you've got somebody who is disabled, for example, you need to know what their disability is. They might be blind, they might be hard of hearing, they might be in a wheelchair. What if there's an emergency? How can you if you're not aware of that information and then tragically something happens, the responsibility is then on you. Now, our software alleviates that risk. It tells you who your tenants are, your residents are. It helps you. It's there to help.
yeah, to help. And
Yeah.
do you think that there's also been, so you mentioned before, like for expectations that residents may have, and you're saying right now also knowing a disability that someone may have too, just in general, all this that is now in the property manager, do you think Airbnb has also had any type of influence in this space where maybe people have higher expectations just for like the hotel industry, but now with so many people being able to be hosts, the expectations across the board have gotten higher?
I think that's a really interesting question, because Airbnb kind of scares me because of its scale and its lack of, if you like, rules and regulations, and you pick up a key, you go into the place, and you're in. Oh, okay. So what happens if it catches fire? Oh, you read the thing on the back of the door. Well, no one told me to read the thing on the back of the door to tell me how to get out. And by the way, the Airbnb as a business, amazing, and shook up the whole hotel world, amazing, but have the right rules and backstops being put into place. That's the thing. I hear some, in the UK, little lads, they get a place and they have a big party. I mean, great fun. Don't listen, nobody likes having fun more than me. But from from a risk perspective, look at it from a risk perspective, it's high risk
Yeah.
because you've got young adults having loads of fun, and you know the combination that goes to in a place they're not used to. And so for me, I think it needs to be regulated more. There's been talk about doing that and all of those things, but I still don't believe. I still think it's a potential ticking time bomb unless something is put in place to say, listen, guys, this is all great, but who's watching this?
Yeah, to have some guardrails in place. At least in the
Yeah,
US, I've seen some hosts have like a sensor to see the decibels of how loud it can get, because which I think is a little bit of an over, like a little bit stepping over too much. But
yeah,
if there was a party, I guess you'd be able to detect that through the sound.
yeah. No, look, I get all of that. For me, it's the fear. It's the fear. What's remarkable, a building is quite a dangerous place. And I realize that's a kind of a really, but it can be under
Yeah.
if it's not used correctly. And I'm not I'm not a fire marshal or a safety fanatic, but it's just some of the things we see with being in
Yeah.
this space. Some of the things that we see, you wouldn't believe. You think, oh my God, really? And that has really opened our eyes into okay. So for example, Airbnb, there should be an Airbnb app, not ours, they can do their own. But everyone that rents an Airbnb's got everything in they need to know about that property they're going to be staying in. And it's not flick through the bloody website and read because people won't do that.
No.
Look at watch a quick video. Here's the emergency exit here. Here's the fire escape here. Here's the fire hydrant. Here's whatever it might be. I don't know.
Yeah, great point. Not everyone reads everything entirely. So how do you make sure that your property managers are able to, I guess, facilitate the right information at the right time? Is it everything done at the very beginning when someone starts their lease, or kind of gradually throughout the time period?
I think that's it. That's a timeline on how that particular building is operated. As
Got
you
it.
rightfully say, a lot of that goes in at the start. We operate. They call it in the UK the golden thread, and what the golden thread is it's a thread of information. So we know if we've sent you the latest update to the fire regulations for the building. So we know we sent it, and we also know whether you've opened it or not. And whether you've read it is another thing. You can take a horse to water, but again, we're doing everything we possibly can, not only as a software provider, but as a to the building management company that are saying we can get this to you, we can make you open it, please read it or
Yeah.
have a look at it. And so we're doing that. And then I think for me, the rest of the information that goes along is the journey of what goes on and certain trigger points that when people stay in these different apartments, really.
Excellent. So, Jeremy, we've been able to touch a lot of different topics. One of the big emphasis of this channel are folks who also are looking to maybe create their own prop tech companies in the future, whether it's something helping out agents or um, construction, etc. So, for those that are just getting started, what are some advice or tips that you have for aspiring entrepreneurs?
Never give up and believe. You don't believe it, you'll never make it. And whatever you build it to your best ability. Build it better than anything else. Don't ever worry about creating the next Amazon. Just make it better. So for me, it's all about it's determination. It's having that belief. Belief is so important. And don't be scared. Don't be afraid. And the prop tech market is wide open. There's so many amazing innovations happening in and around. And many years ago, the Internet of Things was suddenly the buzzword. Well, nothing's really happened with that. Let's be honest. But it will happen. It will come. And we're talking to Samsung's a great example of. I want my fridge to reorder my milk. I really feel like that would be so cool that when I've got down to the last quarter of my milk, it knows by its weight and it orders another one and it's delivered. And I mean, how great is that? And
Yes.
that's all going to come. I want to be able to turn on my washing machine or my dishwasher or remotely. All of those things, they're coming. So the space is wide open, I think, for innovative, young, great ideas. So yeah, just don't ever give up.
Excellent advice, super inspiring. And for those who want to follow Spike Global as well as you, how would they do so?
Well, spikeglobal.com is our website. We've got wonderful blogs on there and loads of information. And send in a message if you want to get hold of me. That'll get to me. I'm happy to speak to anybody or advise where I can. Listen, I've made loads of mistakes in my life, but that's the only way you learn. It's in every day is a learning day, isn't it?
It is. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for your time. Really appreciate it.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you very much.